The dust swirled around the military convoy as it moved through the narrow mountain pass in Afghanistan. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez adjusted her helmet and checked her weapon for the third time that morning. Something felt different about this mission. The intelligence reports had been vague, mentioning possible enemy activity in the area but nothing concrete. Her commanding officer, Captain James Mitchell, sat across from her in the armored vehicle, studying maps and radio communications with intense focus. Maria had been serving under Captain Mitchell for 8 months now. He was the kind of leader who earned respect through actions rather than words. Fair, decisive, and always putting his soldiers first. The unit had complete trust in him, and Maria was no exception. She had worked her way up through the ranks, proving herself time and again in various operations across the region. The convoy consisted of 4 vehicles carrying supplies to a remote outpost. It was supposed to be a routine mission, the kind they had completed dozens of times before. The route was familiar, though always dangerous in this part of the country. The mountains provided perfect cover for ambushes, and everyone in the convoy knew it. That's why they stayed alert, weapons ready, eyes scanning the rocky terrain on both sides of the narrow road. Maria noticed Captain Mitchell seemed more tense than usual. He kept glancing at his watch and checking in with the other vehicles more frequently than normal. When she asked if everything was okay, he simply nodded and said they needed to maintain their schedule. The supply drop was time-sensitive, and delays could put the outpost at risk. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the landscape became more treacherous. Steep cliffs rose on one side while dangerous drops fell away on the other. The road was barely wide enough for their vehicles carved into the mountainside years ago. Radio chatter was minimal, due to the terrain interfering with communications. Each vehicle maintained visual contact with the others following standard protocols. Maria's vehicle was second in the convoy. She could see the lead vehicle ahead, kicking up clouds of dust that made visibility challenging. Behind them, the third and fourth vehicles maintained proper distance. Everything appeared normal, but her instincts told her otherwise. Years of combat experience had taught her to trust those feelings. She kept her finger near the trigger of her rifle and continued scanning the surrounding area. The attack came without warning. One moment they were driving through a relatively quiet section of the pass, and the next the mountain erupted in gunfire. Bullets struck their vehicle from multiple directions, the metallic pings echoing through the confined space. Someone was shouting orders over the radio, but the transmission was broken and unclear. Maria immediately returned fire through her window while trying to locate the source of the attack. Muzzle flashes came from rocky outcroppings above them, indicating at least 6 or 7 enemy fighters positioned at strategic points along the pass. They had been waiting, probably for hours, in perfectly concealed positions. The lead vehicle had taken the worst of the initial assault. Through the dust and smoke, Maria could see it had come to a stop, blocking the narrow road ahead. The convoy was trapped between enemy positions with nowhere to maneuver. Standard protocol would be to establish defensive positions and call for backup. But radio communications were still compromised by the terrain. Captain Mitchell was coordinating the response, directing their driver to position their vehicle to provide cover for the disabled lead vehicle. His calm voice cut through the chaos as he issued orders to the other vehicles in the convoy. Maria admired his composure under fire, even as bullets continued to strike their armored vehicle with increasing intensity. The situation deteriorated rapidly when Maria realized the enemy had anti-tank weapons. The first rocket-propelled grenade exploded near the third vehicle, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. The blast was so close she felt the shock wave through the heavy armor of their vehicle. Smoke filled the air, making it even harder to see their attackers. Captain Mitchell made the decision to dismount and establish defensive positions using the vehicles as cover. It was risky, but staying inside the vehicles made them sitting targets for the rocket attacks. Maria and the other soldiers quickly exited their vehicle and took positions behind the armored doors and wheels, returning fire at the enemy positions above them. The firefight intensified as more enemy fighters joined the ambush. Maria counted at least 12 different muzzle flashes now, coming from both sides of the pass. They were completely surrounded, with enemy forces holding the high ground and superior positioning. The convoy's only advantage was their superior training and equipment, but that might not be enough against such overwhelming odds. As Maria provided covering fire for soldiers moving between vehicles, She noticed Captain Mitchell exposing himself to coordinate the defense. He was moving from position to position, checking on his soldiers and directing their response to the ambush. His leadership was keeping the unit together under extreme pressure, but Maria could see he was taking unnecessary risks. The enemy fire was becoming more accurate as the fighters adjusted their aim. Bullets were striking closer to the soldiers' positions, forcing them to take better cover. Maria realized they needed to either call for immediate backup or find a way to break contact and withdraw from the ambush site. Staying in their current position much longer would result in casualties. Captain Mitchell seemed to reach the same conclusion. He was trying to establish radio contact with headquarters while maintaining command of the tactical situation. Maria watched him carefully, ready to provide support wherever needed. She had served with many officers during her military career, but few had earned her respect the way Captain Mitchell had. His soldiers would follow him anywhere, and today that loyalty would be tested in the most extreme circumstances. The ambush had been perfectly planned and executed. The enemy had chosen their position well, using the terrain to their advantage while eliminating any possibility of escape for the convoy. Maria realized this was going to be a fight for survival, and the next few minutes would determine whether any of them made it home alive. The situation grew more desperate with each passing minute. Maria could hear the distinctive whistle of incoming mortars, forcing everyone to take cover behind whatever protection they could find. The enemy had called in additional support, and the convoy was now facing coordinated fire from multiple weapon systems. Captain Mitchell's voice remained steady over the radio as he tried to organize their defense, but Maria could see the strain on his face. Smoke grenades popped around their position as the soldiers attempted to create concealment from the enemy fighters positioned above them. The white smoke provided some visual cover, but it also made it harder for the convoy to coordinate their movements. Maria stayed close to her assigned position while keeping one eye on Captain Mitchell's location, near the lead vehicle. The third vehicle in their convoy had taken a direct hit from a rocket-propelled grenade. Maria watched in horror as 3 soldiers scrambled out of the damaged vehicle, one of them clearly wounded and being helped by his teammates. They managed to reach cover behind the second vehicle, where a medic immediately began treating the injured soldier. The sight reminded everyone how quickly the situation could turn fatal. Captain Mitchell made the decision to attempt breaking through the ambush rather than waiting for rescue. He believed their only chance was to move forward past the disabled lead vehicle and fight their way through the narrow pass. It was an aggressive plan that required precise timing and coordination between all the soldiers in the convoy. Maria listened as Captain Mitchell explained the plan over the radio. The soldiers from the damaged third vehicle would provide covering fire, while the remaining vehicles attempted to push through the ambush site. It was dangerous, but staying in their current position meant certain death as the enemy continued to call in additional support. The plan required someone to clear the disabled lead vehicle from the narrow roadway. Captain Mitchell volunteered for this extremely dangerous task, which would expose him to direct enemy fire from the elevated positions. Maria watched as he prepared to leave the relative safety of their defensive position and move into the open area around the lead vehicle. As Captain Mitchell began moving toward the disabled vehicle, enemy fire intensified dramatically. The fighters above them had spotted his movement and were concentrating their fire on his position. Bullets struck the ground around him, sending up small explosions of dirt and rock fragments. Maria provided covering fire, but the enemy positions were well protected and difficult to hit effectively. Captain Mitchell reached the lead vehicle and began working to get it started again. The engine had been damaged in the initial attack, but he managed to get it running after several attempts. Maria could see him through the smoke, working frantically while enemy bullets continued to strike the vehicle around him. His determination was remarkable, but she knew he couldn't stay exposed much longer. The plan was working until disaster struck. A sniper's bullet found its mark and Captain Mitchell collapsed beside the lead vehicle. Maria saw him fall and immediately knew he had been seriously wounded. The convoy's leader was down, lying in the open with enemy fire continuing to pour down from the mountain positions around them. Without hesitation, Maria made the decision that would change everything. She left her covered position and sprinted toward Captain Mitchell's location, ignoring the bullets striking the ground around her feet. Her fellow soldiers provided covering fire, but the distance to the lead vehicle seemed enormous under such intense enemy fire. Maria reached Captain Mitchell and quickly assessed his condition. He had been shot in the shoulder and leg but was still conscious and trying to give orders despite his injuries. She grabbed him under his good arm and began dragging him toward better cover behind the lead vehicle. The effort required all her strength, especially while enemy bullets continued to strike nearby. Once they reached temporary cover, Maria applied pressure to Captain Mitchell's wounds while trying to figure out how to get him back to the other vehicles. The distance seemed impossible to cover while carrying a wounded man, but leaving him was not an option. She had made a commitment to never leave a soldier behind, and that commitment applied especially to leaders like Captain Mitchell. Captain Mitchell was trying to maintain command despite his injuries. He kept asking about the status of the other soldiers and whether the convoy could still execute the breakout plan. Maria assured him that everyone was accounted for while she worked to stop his bleeding. She knew they needed to move soon before the enemy positions could be reinforced further. The radio crackled with reports from the other vehicles. The soldiers were asking for orders and updates on Captain Mitchell's condition. Maria realized that with their commanding officer wounded, someone needed to take charge of the tactical situation immediately. The convoy couldn't afford to wait for rescue while under such heavy fire. Maria made another critical decision. She would take command of the immediate situation while ensuring Captain Mitchell received medical attention. Using the radio, she coordinated with the other vehicles to provide covering fire, while she attempted to move the wounded captain to safety. The plan required perfect timing and maximum firepower from every soldier in the convoy. The covering fire began immediately, with every available weapon firing at the enemy position simultaneously. The volume of fire was enormous, forcing the enemy fighters to take cover temporarily. Maria used this brief opportunity to begin moving Captain Mitchell toward the other vehicles, half carrying and half dragging him across the dangerous open ground. Halfway to safety, the covering fire began to slacken as soldiers needed to reload their weapons. Enemy fire resumed immediately, and Maria found herself pinned down with the wounded captain in an exposed position. Bullets struck the ground inches from their location, and she knew they had only seconds before the enemy adjusted their aim. Drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed, Maria managed to reach the second vehicle with Captain Mitchell. Other soldiers immediately helped move him inside where the medic could provide proper treatment. But the tactical situation remained desperate, and someone still needed to coordinate the convoy's response to the ongoing ambush. With Captain Mitchell receiving medical attention, Maria took on the responsibility of leading the convoy's defense. She had never commanded at this level before, but her experience and training kicked in automatically. The other soldiers looked to her for direction, trusting her judgment in the absence of their regular commanding officer. The enemy fire was becoming more organized as additional fighters joined the ambush. Maria realized they had only minutes before the situation became completely hopeless. She needed to make decisions quickly and commit the convoy to a course of action that would either save them all or result in total disaster. Maria quickly assessed their tactical situation while enemy fire continued to pound their positions. The convoy had 3 functional vehicles remaining, with approximately 15 soldiers still capable of fighting. Captain Mitchell was stable but unable to command, leaving the responsibility squarely on her shoulders. She had to make decisions that would determine whether anyone survived the next hour. The enemy had positioned fighters on both sides of the narrow pass, creating a deadly crossfire that made movement extremely dangerous. Traditional military doctrine suggested calling for air support and waiting for rescue, but radio communications remained spotty due to the mountainous terrain. Maria realized they couldn't count on outside help arriving in time to save them. She studied the terrain carefully, looking for any advantage they could exploit. The pass continued for another 200 meters before opening into a wider valley. If they could fight their way through that distance, the convoy would have more room to maneuver and potentially escape the ambush site. The challenge was covering that ground while under fire from elevated positions. Maria made her first command decision. She ordered the soldiers to consolidate their ammunition and prepare for a coordinated assault on the enemy positions. Rather than remaining defensive, they would attack the fighters positioned on the right side of the pass while using smoke grenades to conceal their movement. It was aggressive and risky, but staying in place meant certain death. The plan required splitting their force, something normally avoided in such situations. Half the soldiers would provide covering fire while the other half maneuvered to assault the enemy positions. Maria would lead the assault team personally, knowing that leadership from the front was essential for this type of operation. The soldiers needed to see their commander taking the same risks they were being asked to take. Preparation took precious minutes while enemy fire continued to intensify. Maria could hear the distinctive sound of heavier weapons being brought into position above them. The fighters were receiving reinforcements and additional equipment, confirming that waiting for rescue was not a viable option. They had to move immediately or face overwhelming odds. Maria gave the signal to begin the assault. Smoke grenades created a thick white cloud across their position, while every available weapon opened fire on the enemy fighters positioned on the right side of the pass. The volume of fire was tremendous, forcing the enemy to take cover temporarily. Under this protective barrage, Maria led 6 soldiers in a sprint toward the rocky slope. The climb was treacherous even without enemy fire. Loose rocks and steep inclines made footing uncertain, and each soldier carried heavy equipment that slowed their progress. Maria pushed herself harder than ever before, knowing that speed was essential to reach the enemy positions before the fighters could reorganize their defense. Enemy fire resumed as the assault team climbed higher, but the angle made it difficult for the fighters to target them effectively. Maria could hear bullets striking rocks nearby, but the smoke and terrain provided enough concealment to continue their advance. She focused on reaching the first enemy position, where 2 fighters had been firing down at the convoy. The hand-to-hand combat was brief but intense. Maria and her team overwhelmed the enemy position through superior training and equipment. Capturing this position gave them a significant advantage, as they could now fire down at other enemy locations from an elevated position. The tide of the battle was beginning to shift in their favor. From their new position, Maria could see the entire ambush site laid out below. The enemy had positioned approximately 20 fighters at various points along the pass, with more arriving as reinforcements. Most importantly, she could see a clear route that the convoy could use to escape if they moved quickly and maintained suppressive fire on the remaining enemy positions. Maria radioed her observations to the soldiers still with the vehicles. She directed them to prepare for immediate movement, while her assault team continued to engage enemy positions from their elevated location. The coordination required precise timing, as the vehicles would be exposed during their movement through the narrow pass. The second phase of the assault began with devastating effect. Maria's team fired down at enemy positions while the convoy vehicles began moving through the pass. The crossfire effect caught the enemy fighters in a deadly situation, forcing them to choose between engaging the assault team above or the vehicles below. Their inability to coordinate effectively gave the convoy the advantage it needed. Enemy resistance began to crumble as additional positions were overrun by Maria's assault team. The fighters had expected to ambush a trapped convoy, not face a coordinated counterattack from multiple directions. Their positions had been chosen for attacking downward, not for defending against assault from below and flanking movements from above. Maria maintained constant radio contact with the convoy vehicles, directing their movement and coordinating fire support. She had never commanded at this level before, but her natural leadership abilities and extensive training enabled her to manage the complex tactical situation effectively. The soldiers responded to her orders with confidence and precision. The third vehicle, previously damaged, managed to restart and join the convoy movement. All wounded soldiers had been loaded into the functional vehicles, including Captain Mitchell, who remained conscious despite his injuries. The convoy was finally moving forward, fighting its way through the ambush site under Maria's direction. As the vehicles reached the wider section of the pass, Maria ordered her assault team to begin withdrawing from their elevated positions. They had accomplished their mission of breaking the ambush, but staying on the mountainside would leave them isolated and vulnerable to enemy reinforcements. The team began a controlled withdrawal while maintaining fire on the remaining enemy positions. The extraction required careful coordination to avoid leaving anyone behind. Maria ensured each member of her assault team reached the convoy vehicles safely, while continuing to direct suppressive fire against enemy positions. The entire operation was being conducted under intense pressure, with mistakes potentially fatal for the entire unit. Enemy fighters attempted to pursue the convoy, but their positions had been compromised and their coordination destroyed. Maria's counterattack had turned a perfectly planned ambush into a chaotic retreat for the enemy forces. The convoy was moving freely now, with clear road ahead and diminishing enemy contact. As the last member of the assault team reached the vehicles, Maria took one final look at the ambush site. Bodies of enemy fighters were scattered across the mountainside, and smoke rose from several of their positions. The convoy had fought its way through overwhelming odds and survived what should have been a devastating defeat. Maria climbed into the lead vehicle as the convoy accelerated toward safety. Captain Mitchell was receiving medical treatment, but remained conscious enough to understand what had happened. He looked at Maria with a mixture of gratitude and professional respect, recognizing that her actions had saved not only his life, but the lives of every soldier in the convoy. The convoy reached the forward operating base 3 hours later, with every soldier accounted for and alive. Word of the ambush and successful counterattack spread quickly through the base as medical teams rushed to treat the wounded. Captain Mitchell was immediately taken to the field hospital, where doctors worked to stabilize his injuries before arranging for evacuation to a larger medical facility. Maria found herself the center of attention as senior officers debriefed her on the engagement. Colonel Sarah Williams, the base commander, personally conducted the initial interview while Maria's actions were still fresh in everyone's memory. The colonel had served in combat for over 20 years and recognized exceptional leadership when she saw it. The debriefing lasted several hours as Maria explained every detail of the ambush and counterattack. Military intelligence officers were particularly interested in the enemy's tactics and equipment, hoping to prevent similar ambushes in the future. Maria provided precise information about enemy positions, weapons, and estimated casualties, demonstrating the tactical awareness that had enabled her successful response. Colonel Williams was impressed not only by Maria's courage, but by her ability to command under extreme pressure. Taking charge when the unit's commanding officer was wounded required both technical skill and natural leadership ability. The colonel made notes about Maria's performance, recognizing that such qualities were rare and valuable in the modern military. News of the engagement reached higher levels of command within days. The successful defense against overwhelming odds attracted attention from military leadership, who were always looking for examples of exceptional performance. Maria's actions had not only saved lives but demonstrated innovative tactical thinking that could be applied to similar situations in the future. Captain Mitchell recovered from his wounds over the following weeks, but his injuries were severe enough to require extended medical treatment. He remained conscious enough to provide his own account of the ambush, praising Maria's leadership and decision-making throughout the engagement. His testimony carried significant weight due to his reputation as an experienced and reliable officer. The military's investigation into the ambush revealed that enemy forces had been planning the attack for weeks. Intelligence reports showed that the convoy route had been monitored, and the ambush site had been carefully prepared with multiple weapon positions and escape routes. The enemy had expected an easy victory against a trapped convoy, making Maria's successful counterattack even more remarkable. Maria continued her regular duties while the investigation proceeded, but she noticed changes in how other soldiers treated her. Word of her actions had spread throughout the military community, and she found herself being approached by soldiers seeking advice and guidance. Her reputation as a leader was growing beyond her immediate unit. Colonel Williams called Maria into her office 6 weeks after the ambush. The colonel explained that Maria's actions had been reviewed at the highest levels of military command, and several recommendations had been made regarding her future service. The conversation would change the trajectory of Maria's military career in ways she had never imagined. The first recommendation was immediate promotion to Sergeant First Class, recognizing her demonstrated leadership abilities under combat conditions. The promotion came with increased responsibilities and the opportunity to train other soldiers in small unit tactics. Maria accepted the promotion with gratitude, understanding that it represented trust in her abilities from senior leadership. More significantly, Maria was being recommended for the Silver Star, one of the military's highest decorations for valor. The medal recognized her courage in rescuing Captain Mitchell and her exceptional leadership during the counterattack. Few soldiers received such recognition, and the nomination would be reviewed by a board of senior officers before final approval. Colonel Williams also informed Maria that she was being considered for advanced leadership training at the Army's Command and General Staff College. The program would prepare her for senior leadership positions and provide the education necessary for continued advancement through the officer ranks. It was an opportunity that few enlisted soldiers ever received. The formal award ceremony took place 3 months later, with Maria's family attending along with soldiers from her unit and senior military leadership. Captain Mitchell, still recovering from his injuries, insisted on presenting the Silver Star personally. His speech during the ceremony emphasized not only Maria's courage but her innovative tactical thinking and natural leadership abilities. The Silver Star citation specifically mentioned Maria's willingness to risk her own life to save her commanding officer and her successful leadership of the counterattack that saved the entire convoy. The medal represented official recognition of actions that had already made her a legend among the soldiers who served with her. But for Maria, the real satisfaction came from knowing that every soldier in the convoy had returned home safely. Media attention followed the awards ceremony, with military publications featuring articles about Maria's actions and their broader implications for small unit tactics. Military analysts studied the engagement as an example of how aggressive leadership could overcome superior enemy numbers and positioning. The ambush became a case study taught at military schools and training programs. Maria's success attracted attention from senior officers who recognized her potential for continued advancement. She received offers to serve in various specialized units and training programs, each representing opportunities to expand her skills and influence within the military. The choices she made would determine not only her own career, but her ability to shape military doctrine and training. The most significant opportunity came from General Robert Thompson, commander of Special Operations Forces in the region. The general had read reports of Maria's actions and was impressed by her ability to adapt and innovate under extreme pressure. He offered her a position in an experimental program designed to develop new small unit tactics for unconventional warfare. The program would involve working with the military's best tactical minds to develop doctrine and training programs based on real-world combat experience. Maria's actions during the ambush had demonstrated exactly the kind of innovative thinking the program was designed to foster. Acceptance would mean leaving her current unit, but gaining the opportunity to influence how the military trained and fought. Maria accepted the position, recognizing that it would allow her to share the lessons learned during the ambush with future generations of soldiers. Her experience had taught her valuable lessons about leadership, tactics, and the importance of aggressive action in desperate situations. She wanted to ensure that other soldiers would benefit from those lessons. The transition to her new role required extensive preparation and additional training. Maria worked closely with senior officers and military theorists to analyze her actions during the ambush and extract principles that could be applied more broadly. The process helped her understand how individual actions could influence military doctrine and training across the entire organization. Her new position also required public speaking and teaching, responsibilities that pushed Maria beyond her comfort zone. She found herself addressing groups of senior officers and military analysts, explaining the tactical decisions that had led to success during the ambush. These presentations helped establish her reputation as both a combat leader and a military thinker. Maria's new position with Special Operations Forces opened doors she had never imagined possible during her early military career. Working directly with General Thompson and his staff, she became involved in developing revolutionary training programs that emphasized adaptive leadership and aggressive tactics in small unit operations. Her real-world experience provided credibility that theoretical military experts often lacked. The experimental program attracted attention from Allied military forces around the world. Representatives from British, Canadian, and Australian special operations units visited to observe the training methods being developed based on Maria's experience. Her tactical innovations were being studied and adapted by some of the world's most elite military organizations. Maria's role expanded beyond tactical development to include strategic planning for unconventional warfare scenarios. Her insights into enemy tactics and the psychology of combat leadership proved valuable in planning operations across multiple theaters. Senior officers who had initially been skeptical of promoting an enlisted soldier quickly recognized her exceptional analytical abilities. The success of the training programs led to Maria's selection for the Army War College, the military's premier educational institution for senior leaders. The opportunity was unprecedented for someone of her background, but her demonstrated abilities had earned respect at the highest levels of military command. She would study alongside future generals and policymakers. At the War College, Maria focused on asymmetric warfare and small unit tactics, becoming recognized as the institution's leading expert on adaptive leadership under extreme pressure. Her thesis on combat decision-making drew from personal experience while incorporating broader military theory. The work established her reputation as both a practitioner and a scholar of military arts. Captain Mitchell, now fully recovered from his wounds, served as Maria's mentor during her time at the War College. Their professional relationship had evolved into mutual respect between equals, with Mitchell recognizing that Maria's natural abilities exceeded his own in many areas. He encouraged her to pursue the highest levels of military leadership. Graduation from the War College opened new opportunities for Maria to influence military policy at the national level. She was assigned to the Pentagon, where her expertise in small unit tactics and adaptive leadership was applied to planning operations worldwide. Her recommendations directly influenced how American forces engaged in unconventional warfare. Scenarios. Maria's Pentagon assignment included briefing senior military and civilian leadership on tactical innovations and their strategic implications. Her presentations to generals and cabinet-level officials demonstrated how individual actions in combat could influence broader military doctrine. These briefings established her reputation among the military's top decision-makers. Recognition of Maria's contributions led to her promotion to major, making her one of the youngest officers to achieve that rank in recent military history. The promotion reflected not only her personal courage, but her proven ability to influence military operations at strategic levels. She had transformed from a combat soldier into a military leader and theorist. The promotion ceremony was attended by hundreds of military personnel, including many who had served with Maria during her early career. General Thompson presented the promotion personally, emphasizing how Maria's actions had influenced military thinking far beyond the single engagement where she first demonstrated exceptional leadership. Her story had become an inspiration for soldiers throughout the PAI. Military.media coverage of Maria's career highlighted the military's ability to recognize and develop exceptional talent regardless of background or initial rank. Military publications featured her story as an example of how individual courage and innovation could reshape entire organizations. Her success encouraged other soldiers to pursue leadership opportunities and professional development. International recognition followed as allied military forces invited Maria to speak at conferences and training programs. Her expertise in adaptive leadership and small unit tactics was sought by military organizations worldwide. These speaking engagements established her as a globally recognized expert in military leadership and tactical innovation. Maria's influence extended beyond military circles as civilian leadership experts studied her methods and decision-making processes. Business schools and leadership programs incorporated case studies based on her actions during the ambush and subsequent career development. Her story demonstrated how principles of combat leadership could apply to challenging situations in any organization. The establishment of the Rodriguez Center for Leadership Excellence at the Army War College represented the ultimate recognition of Maria's contributions to military thinking. The center would train future military leaders using methods and principles developed from her experience and research. Her name would be permanently associated with innovative military leadership. Maria was selected to serve as the center's first director, giving her the opportunity to directly influence how the military developed its future leaders. The position allowed her to combine practical combat experience with advanced military theory and training programs that would shape military leadership for generations to come. The center's curriculum emphasized the principles Maria had demonstrated during the ambush: rapid decision-making under pressure, adaptive leadership when plans failed, and the courage to take calculated risks when conventional approaches proved inadequate. These principles were applied to scenarios ranging from small unit combat to strategic military planning. Student officers from around the world attended programs at the Rodriguez Center, taking Maria's leadership methods back to their own military organizations. The center became known for producing officers who could think independently and act decisively in challenging situations. Military historians began to recognize the center's influence on modern military leadership development. Maria's work at the center included developing new methods for identifying and training potential military leaders. Her research into the psychological factors that enabled exceptional performance under pressure helped the military better select and prepare officers for challenging assignments. These methods improved the military's ability to develop effective leaders at all levels. The center also served as a research institution for studying military leadership and tactical innovation. Maria worked with civilian academics and military historians to document and analyze leadership practices that proved effective in modern warfare. This research influenced military doctrine and training programs worldwide. Recognition of Maria's contributions culminated in her promotion to lieutenant colonel and selection for brigade command. The assignment would give her operational responsibility for thousands of soldiers and the opportunity to implement her leadership methods in active military operations. Her career had come full circle from individual soldier to senior military leader. The announcement of Maria's promotion and new assignment generated significant attention within military circles. Her story demonstrated the military's commitment to recognizing exceptional talent and providing opportunities for continued advancement. Young soldiers saw her career as proof that merit and dedication could overcome any background or initial limitations. Maria's legacy was already being established through the soldiers trained using her methods and the tactical innovations incorporated into military doctrine. Her influence would continue through the officers educated at the Rodriguez Center and the operational units that implemented her leadership principles. The single act of courage that saved Captain Mitchell had evolved into a transformation of military leadership development. Maria's brigade command assignment took her back to combat operations, where she could apply the leadership principles she had developed throughout her career. The 3rd Brigade Combat Team was considered one of the military's premier units, and her selection as commander represented complete confidence in her abilities from the highest levels of military leadership. Her first major operation as brigade commander involved a complex mission in a region known for sophisticated enemy tactics and challenging terrain. The operation required coordinating multiple units across difficult geography while maintaining operational security against a well-informed enemy. Maria's experience with adaptive leadership and innovative tactics would be tested at the highest level. The mission planning process demonstrated how Maria's methods had evolved from individual combat actions to strategic military thinking. She incorporated lessons learned from the original ambush, emphasizing aggressive action and adaptive leadership while ensuring her subordinate commanders understood the principles behind her tactical decisions. The planning sessions became teaching opportunities for the entire brigade staff. Maria's approach to command emphasized developing leadership capabilities throughout her brigade rather than centralizing decision-making authority. She trained her subordinate commanders to think independently and act decisively, creating a more resilient organization that could adapt to changing circumstances without waiting for orders from higher headquarters. The operation's success exceeded all expectations, with the brigade accomplishing its objectives ahead of schedule and with minimal casualties. Military analysts attributed the success to innovative tactics and exceptional leadership at all levels within the brigade. Maria's leadership methods had proven effective when applied to large-scale military operations. Recognition of the brigade's success led to additional high-profile assignments that established Maria as one of the military's most effective combat commanders. Her reputation attracted attention from allies and adversaries alike, with foreign military organizations studying her methods and seeking opportunities to learn from her experience. Captain Mitchell, now Colonel Mitchell and serving in senior Pentagon positions, continued to serve as Maria's mentor and advocate within military leadership circles. Their professional relationship had evolved into a partnership that influenced military thinking at the highest levels. Mitchell often credited Maria's rescue during the ambush as the turning point in both their careers. Maria's promotion to colonel came with assignment to the War College as commandant, making her responsible for the education of the military's future senior leaders. The position represented the pinnacle of military education and professional development, with influence extending far beyond individual careers to the future direction of military thinking. As commandant, Maria implemented sweeping changes to the War College curriculum, that emphasized practical leadership experience alongside traditional military theory. Her reforms incorporated lessons learned from modern combat operations while maintaining the institution's high academic standards. The changes influenced how military officers worldwide approached strategic planning and leadership development. International students at the War College under Maria's leadership returned to their home countries with new approaches to military leadership and tactical thinking. Her influence began spreading through allied military organizations, as officers trained in her methods assumed senior positions in their own forces. The impact of her leadership extended far beyond American military operations. The Rodriguez Center for Leadership Excellence continued to expand under Maria's guidance, becoming a model for military education institutions worldwide. Foreign military organizations sent representatives to study the center's methods and adapt them for their own leadership development programs. Maria's influence on military education became truly global in scope. Research conducted at the center under Maria's direction produced new insights into combat leadership and decision-making under pressure. Military psychologists and leadership experts studied the factors that enabled exceptional performance in extreme situations. This research influenced not only military training but civilian leadership development programs. Maria's speaking engagements at international conferences established her as a globally recognized expert on leadership and organizational development. Business leaders and government officials sought her insights on managing complex organizations under pressure. Her methods proved applicable to challenging situations, far beyond military operations. The establishment of the Maria Rodriguez Leadership Institute at civilian universities represented recognition of her contributions beyond military circles. The institute studied leadership principles derived from military experience and applied them to civilian organizations facing complex challenges. Academic research at the institute influenced leadership theory and practice worldwide. Maria's memoir, detailing her journey from enlisted soldier to senior military leader, became required reading at military academies and business schools worldwide. The book provided detailed analysis of the decisions and principles that enabled her success, offering practical guidance for leaders facing similar challenges in their own organizations. The memoir's success led to translation into dozens of languages, spreading Maria's leadership philosophy to military and civilian organizations around the globe. Young leaders in countries she had never visited began applying her methods to their own challenging situations. The single act of courage that saved Captain Mitchell had evolved into a global influence on leadership development. Maria's final military assignment came as a general officer, making her one of the highest-ranking leaders in American military history. Her promotion ceremony was attended by hundreds of officers whose careers had been influenced by her methods and example. The event represented not just personal achievement, but recognition of how individual courage could transform entire organizations. As a general, Maria oversaw military operations across multiple regions while continuing to influence strategic planning and leadership development. Her approach to command emphasized the same principles she had demonstrated during the original ambush: rapid decision-making, adaptive leadership, and the courage to take calculated risks when conventional approaches proved inadequate. The conflicts Maria commanded during her general officer years demonstrated the lasting value of her leadership methods. Units trained using her principles consistently outperformed expectations, adapting quickly to changing circumstances and accomplishing missions that had seemed impossible using traditional approaches. Her influence on military effectiveness was measurable and significant. Military historians began recognizing Maria's contributions as fundamentally changing how modern armies developed and employed their leadership talent. Her methods influenced military doctrine in dozens of countries, with many organizations completely restructuring their leadership development programs based on principles she had pioneered. The annual Rodriguez Leadership Conference became a premier international event, attracting military and civilian leaders from around the world. The conference provided a forum for sharing innovations in leadership development, while honoring the principles Maria had demonstrated throughout her career. Attendance at the conference became a mark of distinction among global leadership communities. Maria's retirement ceremony drew representatives from military organizations worldwide, with many speakers crediting her influence on their own careers and organizations. The ceremony celebrated not just individual achievement, but the transformation of military leadership that had resulted from her example and teachings. In retirement, Maria established a foundation dedicated to developing leadership capabilities in young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. The foundation provided scholarships and training programs that gave opportunities to individuals who might otherwise never have the chance to develop their leadership potential. Her commitment to developing others continued beyond her military service. The foundation's programs incorporated the same principles that had guided Maria's military career, identifying potential in unexpected places, providing rigorous training and development opportunities, and creating environments where natural leadership abilities could flourish. Thousands of young people benefited from programs designed around Maria's philosophy. Captain Mitchell, now retired as a general himself, served on the Foundation's board of directors and frequently spoke about how Maria's actions during the ambush had influenced his own approach to leadership development. Their partnership continued in civilian life, focused on ensuring that future generations would benefit from the lessons they had learned together. The Rodriguez Foundation's success attracted support from business, leaders and government officials who recognized the value of developing exceptional leadership capabilities. Corporate sponsors funded programs that identified and developed leadership potential in young people who showed promise but lacked opportunities for advancement. International recognition of Maria's contributions culminated in her selection for the Nobel Peace Prize Committee's consideration, though she declined the nomination, stating that her contributions had been made possible by the soldiers who served with her and the institutions that supported her development. Her humility remained constant, despite global recognition of her achievements. Universities worldwide established endowed chairs in Maria's name, supporting research into leadership development and organizational effectiveness. Academic study of her methods influenced fields ranging from military science to business administration, with scholars continuing to discover new applications for principles she had pioneered. The legacy Maria created extended far beyond individual recognition or career achievement. Her influence could be measured in the thousands of leaders trained using her methods, the military organizations transformed by her innovations, and the young people given opportunities through her foundation. The moment of courage that saved Captain Mitchell had created ripple effects that would continue for generations. Today, military academies around the world include the Rodriguez Doctrine as fundamental curriculum, teaching future officers the principles of adaptive leadership under pressure. Business schools analyze her decision-making processes as examples of effective leadership in crisis situations. Her story continues to inspire leaders facing their own moments of critical decision-making. The mountain pass where Maria first demonstrated exceptional leadership has been designated as a historic site, with a memorial honoring all the soldiers who fought there. Visitors learn about the engagement that launched a career which fundamentally changed how organizations develop and employ leadership talent. The memorial serves as a reminder that individual acts of courage can have consequences far beyond their immediate circumstances.